There's a version of intelligence nobody tests for. Not IQ, not vocabulary, not the ability to recall facts fast or impress people in a room. It's the ability to notice in the middle of your own certainty that you might be wrong, and keep thinking anyway. Psychology has been tracking the behavioral signs that someone hasn't built that capacity, quietly, through decades of research that almost never makes it into the conversations people are actually having. This isn't about scoring people or placing them in a hierarchy. It's about patterns, the kind you can see in a meeting room, at a dinner table, in the middle of an argument, that researchers have consistently linked to lower cognitive flexibility and reduced self-awareness. Some of what you're about to hear, you'll recognize in people around you. That's the easy part. Some of it will be harder. That's usually how it works when the thing being examined is close to home. Sign 1, overconfidence without competence. You've sat across from someone who is absolutely certain, never hesitates, never says I don't know, and you notice over time that they're wrong a lot. That certainty isn't confidence. David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell published research in 1999 showing that people with the lowest actual performance rated themselves the highest, not slightly higher, dramatically higher. The less someone knows, the more convinced they know enough. And the inverse is true. People who have actually put in the work understand how much they still don't know. Real competence comes with doubt. That's not weakness. That's the system working correctly. Sign 2. The inability to sit alone with your own thoughts. You've noticed it. People who can't be in a room without sound, who reach for their phone the second nothing is happening, who fill every pause in conversation because silence feels like something went wrong. Research published in Science found that a significant portion of people would rather give themselves mild electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. That wasn't a figure of speech. That was the actual finding, and it surprised even the researchers who designed the study. Your default mode network, the part of the brain that activates when you're not focused on external input, is where sophisticated cognitive processing happens. Planning, self-reflection, creative connection. People who can't access silence are cutting themselves off from their own processing power. Sign 3, black and white thinking. The person who needs a verdict immediately, who gets visibly uncomfortable when you say, it depends, who in every situation needs something to be right or wrong, good or bad, us or them. Psychologist Ari Kruglansky at the University of Maryland spent decades researching what he called the need for cognitive closure, the desire for a definitive answer, and an intolerance for ambiguity. It's not just a personality quirk. It correlates with reduced cognitive complexity. And under stress, it shuts down creative problem solving entirely. The capacity to hold two contradictory ideas at the same time, to say, both of these things are partially true and I need to understand why, is one of the consistent markers of advanced reasoning. It's also uncomfortable, which is why most people don't stay there long enough to do anything useful with it. Sign 4, taking credit for what worked, deflecting blame for what didn't. This one is almost universal. The project succeeds, they say, I knew this would work. It fails, bad timing, external factors, someone else didn't do their part. Psychologists call it the self-serving attribution bias. It's one of the most consistently documented patterns in social psychology, and research shows it runs deeper in people with lower self-reflection capacity, not because they're malicious, but because the brain genuinely rewrites the narrative in real time. The rewrite happens before awareness does. The people who can look at a failure and ask, what specifically did I miss? And actually mean it have a cognitive habit most people never build. Not because it's hard to understand, because it's consistently uncomfortable to practice. Sign 5. The impulse that arrives before the thought does, not the catastrophic version, the quiet daily version, the message sent before it's processed, the opinion stated before you've read the room, the reaction that shows up 3 seconds before the thinking does. Walter Mischel's research at Stanford, the original delayed gratification studies established a clear link between impulse control and long-term cognitive outcomes across multiple decades of follow-up. But more recent work added something important. Environment shapes this as much as wiring. Someone who grew up in high uncertainty didn't learn to wait because waiting often didn't pay off. That's not lower intelligence. That's calibrated survival. The brain adapted to a specific environment. The question is whether that adaptation still serves you now that the environment has changed. Sign 6, mistaking familiarity for understanding. The person who has heard about something becomes the person who knows about it. They've watched the documentary, read 2 articles, heard it mentioned in conversation. Now they have a fully formed position. Researchers at Yale published findings on what they called the illusion of explanatory depth, the consistent gap between how well people think they understand something and how well they can actually explain it when pressed. Ask them to walk you through the mechanism step by step. Most can't. The familiarity felt like knowledge. It wasn't. Real understanding survives being questioned. It can reconstruct itself from first principles without the original phrasing. That requires a different kind of cognitive effort, not because most people are incapable, but because daily life rarely asks them to do it. Here's where it gets harder. Some of what I've described, you'll recognize it in specific people. That's the easy part. It's much harder to sit with the version where you recognize some of it in yourself. The question isn't whether these patterns mean you're less intelligent. The question is, are you thinking or are you reacting? And do you actually know the difference in the moment it's happening? Most people don't. That's not a judgment, that's just honest. Sign 7. Repeating the same patterns and expecting different results. This one shows up loudest in relationships. Cognitive flexibility. The ability to update your approach based on actual feedback is one of the most consistent markers researchers track in studies on adaptive reasoning. And it shows up most clearly in interpersonal dynamics because that's where emotional noise is highest and the pressure to maintain a fixed story about yourself is strongest. A man spent 15 years cycling through 3 relationships that ended the same way, the same walls going up, the same words said the same exit. When the last one ended, his daughter asked him one question: "Dad, what do all 3 of those women have in common?" He said nothing. She said, "You." That was the first day the pattern became visible to him. Not the third ending, just that question. Seeing the pattern requires stepping outside it. Stepping outside it means accepting that you are part of what kept repeating. Most people choose not to. Sign 8. Needing an audience to feel sharp. The person who's most impressive when people are watching. Who seems most capable in the room when there's social pressure. But alone with no audience, nothing gets built. Psychologists distinguish between performance intelligence, the ability to appear competent in social situations, and fluid intelligence, the capacity to reason through novel problems independently. These don't always travel together. Some people have developed one without the other. People who do their best thinking when no one is watching have a different relationship with their own mind. It's not for the room. It's not for approval. It just happens whether anyone is there or not. If you're a man, that last sign hits differently. Because men are often trained to perform intelligence, to have the answer ready, to not need time to look certain in front of others. Real thinking, slow, uncertain, iterative, doesn't look impressive in real time. It just produces better outcomes later. Most rooms reward the performance, not the process. Follow for more on the psychology of quiet intensity. There's more where this came from. Real intelligence doesn't announce itself. It just keeps working, refining, correcting, updating, whether anyone's watching or not. That's what makes it hard to see, and that's what makes it rare. Which of these did you recognize in yourself, not in someone else? Drop the number in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send it to them. Sometimes having a name for the pattern is the first step to stepping outside it.